Thursday, November 14th, 2024, and I welcome everyone to the Intermediate District 287 School Board meeting. It is so wonderful to have a truly bustling and energy-filled room tonight. Thanks all of you for being here with us. We're excited to hear from you in this first part of our meeting. So as always, we are going to start our board meeting with a reading of the Intermediate District 287 mission statement to really help ground our work as a school board and as a school community together tonight. And board member Mike Remicall is going to do the reading for us tonight.
The mission of Intermediate District 287 is to be the premier provider of innovative, specialized services to ensure that each member district can meet the unique learning needs of its students.
Thank you. And will you begin board member introductions as well?
Yeah, I'm Mike Remicall. I represent the Minnetonka School District.
Great.
Hello, I'm Karen Arcott from Orono Schools.
Good evening, I'm Michael Birdman. I represent Edina Public Schools.
Renee Bowman from Robbinsdale Area Schools.
Hi, I'm Shannon Andreessen from Hopkins Public Schools.
I'm Crystal Brackey from Richfield Public Schools.
Ann Casey, proudly representing St. Louis Park.
Ruthie Dallins, representing Brooklyn Center Community Schools.
I'm Heidi Marty with West Tonka Schools.
Dan Genestra, Wayzata Public Schools.
Kim Ross, Eden Prairie Public Schools.
Thanks, everyone. We have one board member who's not able to be with us tonight, and that's Jackie Mosqueda Jones from Osseo Public Schools. The next item on our agenda is approval of our meeting agenda tonight, which just lays out the different things that we are going to be talking about in our meeting this evening. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
We have a motion by Dan Genestra and a second by Heidi Marty. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Next, we have time for open forum for community comments for any member of the community who asked for time to speak with the board this evening. And I don't believe we had anybody sign up tonight.
No, ma'am.
Great, thank you. So next on the list is approval of the consent agenda, which contains routine business items that we approve in one group, unless there is an item that a board member would like removed for individual consideration. I did not hear about anything in advance. I don't see a board member prepared to request that. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Ann Casey and a second by Michael Birdman. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the consent agenda is approved. Okay, we got all the formal business out of the way. Now we are going to move to one of our favorite parts of every meeting, which is share the success and recognition. And really excited to welcome some of our special guests in the room this evening. First up tonight is our student spotlight, and I am going to invite up Dr. Elizabeth Lamb, our now Assistant Director of Special Education for Intermediate District 287, who is going to introduce our student tonight.
Can you hear me all right? Okay. Madam Chair, Superintendent Dowd, board members, my 287 colleagues, and community members. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you today with this amazing student, Madison, who is from Hopkins Public Schools, and her mother, Kelly, and two members of the itinerant team, Cassandra, who is a teacher of students who are blind and low vision, and Sophie as her orientation mobility specialist, and her brother as well. We are so thrilled that they could join us today. For a quick overview, the itinerant division serves 1,666 students who receive itinerant services in places such as the child's home, daycare centers for our youngest learners, their neighborhood schools, District 287 sites as well, across birth to 22. Your students, our students, Madison, who has joined us today, they're vibrant, they're dynamic, they're curious, and they're eager to learn. Our students are so diverse across the ability of dimensions of ability. We support students who identify as blind or have low vision, deaf or hard of hearing, or experience deaf blindness. They may experience a physical or health condition, communicate through their home language, through American Sign Language, through English, through AAC devices, and in additional ways. They each navigate in ways that are organic to their being. For each student, we collaboratively figure out with the student, the caregiver, and the school team, what are the pathways for access? Where are our superhighways? Where are those ways that we can gain learning and gain knowledge? Whether it's through large print, Braille, tactile graphics, American Sign Language, amplification, organizational systems and structures, regulation strategies, ways to integrate their learning, language scaffolding, specialized seating. What's that combination? What's that best fit combination to get us our superhighway? We also identify where are slow back roads. Those are hard to navigate with the roadblocks of access, the detours that are long and exhausting. As a team, we identify and create conditions where students can leverage their superhighway and avoid the slow back road, because the slow back road won't get us to learning quick enough. And we support learning environments where students can feel and be comfortable using their own superhighway that's customized to them in their classrooms. Learning environments where students can be authentically themselves in the many facets of their identity and know that they belong and that they're a full member of the learning community. So as our next step, I will pass to Solvi and Madison, who will highlight some of the tools that we use for with students who have blindness or experience low vision. Then we'll pass to Kelly, Madison's mother, and then to Cassandra Madison, who will do a quick question and answer, and then we can open it up for broader questions.
If you have any comment, please.
Okay. We're going to present some of the materials that Madison used at school. So with Cassandra, with her vision teacher, she uses a lot her iPad, right?
Yep.
And one thing that Madison loves a lot is using the accessibility features on her iPad.
Mhm.
We're not going to demonstrate all of it, but Madison has her little keyboard and everything set up, and she just plays and has become very proficient with all the accessibility features, and even shows some of her peers about that too, right? And use a lot there. Another thing that you do is that you use a brailler.
Mhm.
A little bit of Braille just for some exposure, right? That's another tool that you use. We can show everyone what a brailler is. And that's what you do for in school. And then you and I, what we've discovered together is that you have learned about your white cane. Want to open it up for everyone?
Sure. It magnetically, I think so, connects over here on the sides. Right, so you have to be very careful, and then you shake it out just in case if it didn't fully click. And then for it, I'm gonna speak a bit louder. So you just sway it back and forth, or in a constant pattern. But there's another way. It's called 2-point touch, whatever. It's like this. But I found out that doing this constant contact makes it have more feedback, and it's just generally more easy, and it's easier to find things that might be a bit lower that or higher you might not notice.
And Madison, you have always told me, oh my gosh, I love the feedback that this cane is giving me, and this is so fun. And when we discovered, we compared different canes.
Yeah.
And you picked this specific tip, which is called a rolling marshmallow tip. But you love that tip, and it's just, you're so happy when you travel with that, right? So other things that we are doing together is we are learning about traffic. We're learning about how to cross streets, and we're doing a lot of practice. Sometimes it's hard to see the traffic lights. Sometimes it's hard to see the stop signs. So how do we figure out how to still do it in a safe way, right? And at the same time, how can I stay oriented and not get lost when I'm walking? We're practicing all these things, and sometimes we use some maps and practice and talk about it inside, and sometimes we go outside.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Perfect. That's a great summary. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Kelly, Madison's mom. So one of the things that Dr. Lamb talked about, pathways to accessibility. When Madison was just a toddler, she had to go through a couple of, well, as an infant, she went through one operation to remove her cataracts. And then later she had to have her eyes scraped because it was basically like looking through a lens that had dishwash detergent and stuff like all smeared all over it. Everything just looked very cloudy. She didn't really see things. And the interesting thing is like after you go through that and then, you know, you talk about like corrective lenses and that sort of thing, everybody thinks, oh, well, that solves the problem. And that's just one little piece of the whole issue. And there's so many different things that people don't think about when you have a child that hasn't really been able to see at all. You know, it's just been basically a blur, and now they can actually see shapes, see colors more clearly. She had to learn how to like identify things in a normal way, things that you completely don't think about, learning to accurately register expressions. So she had to learn, almost like an autistic child, she had to learn what all the different reactions, faces, what all of those meant, because for all those years until she was 4, she really couldn't see faces. So she couldn't really read expressions. We take that for granted that we can do that. She had to learn how to do that. And it's one of those little details. It doesn't sound like a big thing, but it actually is a huge thing and something we didn't even think about in, you know, starting this journey with her to improve her vision. Over the years, I will say there's been a lot of confusion and frustration with people thinking, oh, well, she has corrective lenses, so that should, you know, solve so many problems. And, oh, we find out if you enlarge it to X size, that's going to solve the problems. That doesn't solve the problem. It took us many, many years, again, talking about pathways to accessibility. It took us many, many years of trying many different things to figure out that really her vision is so unique in that because she doesn't have a cataract lens, which is what helps us to actually focus on very specific items, she literally has to hold things like literally up to her face to really see them clearly and in detail. And when she's looking at words, like for reading, that was a big frustration. She has an incredible vocabulary. She understands the English language incredibly well. But when it comes to reading, she actually is basically looking through a telescope, can only see like a few letters at one time. So she has to scan words every time to see what they are. People unfortunately mistake the way that she reads as, oh, she's phonetically sounding everything out. She doesn't know how to read. No, she does know how to read. She actually has great, you know, vocabulary and comprehension. That is not the problem. The problem is literally how to see the words. And so that gets really confusing for a lot of people unless they really understand, like her special ed teacher does, you know, unless they truly understand all the pieces of this, then it gets very confusing for some people and frustrating because there's a misunderstanding about what these different tools mean and how she should be able to get around. In addition to the cane, she actually also has a walker at school. We didn't even talk about the fact that she also has other birth defects and mobility issues that she has to navigate in addition to the vision piece. And one of the things that she didn't mention with the cane, one of the reasons why we have the cane with us all the time is because if we're navigating new spaces, any little difference in levels in the floor can she'll trip over her own feet. It's that sensitive. And when she's standing at the top of stairs, when she looks down at those stairs, especially if they're all like, let's say concrete, that's the worst one to navigate. If she's looking at a concrete set of stairs, she looks at it, she sees a smooth plane. She does not see individuated steps. And so that is one of the most critical times when we have to use the cane. That is a very necessary moment to use that tool. But other times she, you know, especially it's a space she's familiar with, like over at West Middle School, that's a very smooth, very open, very handicap accessible space. So that she usually navigates without the cane, just because it is so user-friendly and easy to access. But definitely in navigating outside of the school, like Sophie does with her in her experimental excursions out into the real world, the cane can actually be very, very helpful and prevent injuries. Just as an example of how critical that is, when she was in elementary school, just going from her elementary to the aftercare program, which was just at the community center, which is connected, she navigated outside, and there was a situation that there was a mishap and didn't see a surface change properly, and she fell and she split her chin open, and it required 5 stitches. So, I mean, this is a very serious issue when we talk about navigating spaces. It's not, we're just being overly cautious. I mean, it could result in real injury. So we do appreciate tools like that. They are extremely helpful. They do help to prevent those kind of situations. But there's so many different aspects that we could talk all day about, all the different things that she uses. But they're all pieces of the puzzle, and we can't just check a box and say, oh, yep, she's got her glasses. Oh, yep, she's got a cane. She should be good to go. All these pieces have to work together, and you have to make sure that it all symbiotically comes together. Otherwise, none of it works. And that is true in general. I would also say with special education, all these pieces have to work together. You have to make sure that the time, the energy, the effort all come together. You can't just check a box and say, oh, well, we gave her, 10 minutes for that, 50 minutes for that. You have to think about the whole picture. And it's very complicated. And unfortunately, especially for vision, it is a process. It took us years to figure out exactly how she was able to see things, because obviously as a 4-year-old, she doesn't know how to articulate what she is dealing with or what she's going through. And then obviously as she gets older and learns how to describe these things better and communicate this better, obviously then you start to figure out more of the pieces, and then eventually getting to the point where she can advocate for herself. I mean, that's a huge piece, is empowering the kids to get to a point where they can advocate for themselves, so you can really help them. Because until you get to that point, you're still stabbing at the dark until they can really, really articulate what their needs are. So I appreciate everything that Hopkins has done. I'm your poster child of of appreciation. So thank you, and thanks for having Madison come in.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna do a little Q&A with Madison and myself. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Madison, what is something you really enjoy about what we are learning together?
Braille and typing.
Okay. What has been something difficult in your vision or mobility lessons, but you accomplished it anyways?
Probably Braille. Contraction words, and for mobility, it's probably crossing some streets.
All right, and last question, what are your plans for your future?
To become a vision teacher, and also get $100 a second. I'll try once.
Yeah, get a pay raise.
I need $1 still.
I like how your goals increased there. Really. How you do it. Yeah.
Good humor.
So again, thank you so much for hosting us. If there is any questions, feel free. I also want to give the opportunity to pass to our next colleagues as well. So just let us know what you need.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful team effort. So thanks to all of you for just sharing the different pieces of your work and supporting Madison. And Madison, thank you so much for being part of that lovely little Q&A with your teacher that we just had. I think, let's see if we've got 1 or 2 questions from the board. If there's something that people would like to ask to any members of the team. Go ahead,
It's
Michael.
not so much a question, it's really just a comment. When we read out the mission of 287. This is an exemplary representation of what it is when we talk about innovative, specialized services to ensure that each member district, in this case Hopkins, can meet the unique learning needs of a student like Madison. And so I think it's just a wonderful reminder that the work that's being done every day in this organization by all those talented people, by the families, that's just a really wonderful presentation and reminder that when we say our mission at the beginning of every meeting, it's not just words, it's actions. So I just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
We'll do Dan and then we'll end with our Hopkins School Board member.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for, coming before us and, telling your story. It takes a lot of courage, especially to come before so many people and whatnot. So just really good on you for being here, and maybe we'll see you back sometime.
As a vision teacher.
YouTube channel.
Or $1 million with it.
Not sure we're gonna be able to do that for you. Go ahead, Shannon.
Maybe we'll get you that many followers on your YouTube channel. I am thrilled that you are here, and I have just one specific question of where did you come from in Hopkins? What was your school that you went to?
The school I'm in right now.
And the one before that.
One before that.
I don't remember. My mom knows. Ask her.
Eisenhower. Great. I was thinking maybe, because that's one that has a community center connected to it.
Yeah.
And then how long have you been at West?
2 years.
2 years. Nice. And did you decide to take up Braille because that's something you wanted to learn?
Yeah.
I love it. I've gotten some letters written in Braille and it is beautiful. So that's really cool that you're learning that.
And the reason why I'm also doing Braille is in case if my vision somehow gets worse for whatever reason, I can use Braille to help me navigate as well.
Nice.
Very
smart.
Wow.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here tonight.
Let's give Madison and team a big. Good job.
All right. Okay. I quit. I didn't get my paycheck. I'm quitting this job.
All right. While the team is packing up all of those really cool things, thank you for bringing these to show us. I am going to invite up our next guest, which is Principal Amanda Klutman, who is going to introduce our November 2024 Above and Beyond winner.
Thank you, Madam Chair Brackey, Superintendent Dowd, and board members. I'm Amanda Klutman. I'm the principal of Care and Treatment Programs and Career and Tech Center. I am really excited to introduce you to the Care and Treatment Above and Beyond Award winner. I'm going to cry because I've worked with Katie for a really long time. Katie Ha. She's absolutely phenomenal. In Care and Treatment, we currently have 8 programs. We have 4 hospital programs, 3 residential programs, and 1 day program. We also work with 5 different agencies and over 160 school districts in the state and outside of the state of Minnesota. Many of the students we serve are with us anywhere from 1 day to 18 months. This means our students are coming and going very fast, and Katie Ha keeps our ship moving in the right direction in her role as an administrative support 5. Katie is well organized, communicates professionally with all stakeholders, is flexible, responsive, and she's just incredibly skillful and an amazing human being overall. She's oftentimes the go-to person to brainstorm ideas with. She's my first person I talk to every morning as we're trying to figure out subbing. Now, I would like to share with you what one of her colleagues had to say about Katie. Katie is quite simply the glue that holds us together. Katie is instrumental in advancing our 3 strategic priorities, providing the critical support and grounding needed for them to survive or thrive. She takes on the organization behind countless classroom logistics, allowing us, the teachers, to focus more fully on academics. Katie's contributions go beyond behind the scenes support. She is a true advocate for our division's well-being, dedicating herself to growing her skills in equity, social emotional learning. Katie not only pursues personal growth, but shares her insights in meetings and within the care and treatment team, spreading best practices to elevate our work. Katie understands how small actions contribute to larger outcomes and approaches everything she does with her heart. She cares deeply for everyone who passes through our doors, staff, students, parents, and partners alike. Her dependability, skill, and compassion make her an invaluable team member who brings out the best in all of us. Thank you, Katie.
You don't have to if you don't want to. I appreciate somebody who is also just wants to sit on the side and hopefully absorb some really beautiful words from people who have the good fortune of working with you every day. We appreciate just getting a little bit of a window into that tonight. And so thank you for being here with us. And thank you, Amanda.
And I like your Hopkins shirt.
I had to wear it. No, I was waiting for that. actually.
We have great crabs.
Thank you so much. All right, we are now going to move on to the instructional report where we have 4 really big and important presentations this evening. So first up, I'm going to invite up Brian Schultz, our Executive Director of Business Services, for the enrollment report.
All right. Thank you, Chair Brackey, board members, Superintendent Dowd. So everyone does have a hard copy. I'm not going to present on the screen this evening. Sometimes the graphs and some of the charts get really hard to read. So we provided everyone a hard copy. So I'll just kind of reference pages as we're going through the report. So just a couple reminders of the report of what some of the data is and where we're at. So right, we're presenting our fall fiscal 2025 enrollment for District 287. And right, enrollments, when we're pulling numbers for, it's a point in time. So as of this report, it's October 17th data, and right, it changes daily as we go through the year. So this will continue to change, and then final enrollment doesn't really get reported until almost this time next year, when final numbers really get reported to MDE. And then when we look at some of the charts, some will be on head count, and then some are on ADM. So ADM is average daily membership. So that's when you think of if a student's in our school every day for all class periods of the year, they're a 1.0 ADM, they're a full-time student. Let's say they're here half of the time or half of the school year, we wouldn't get a 1.0, so they would be considered a 0.5. So when we think of that as students come and go throughout the year, they're not a 1.0, and some of our funding is based on that ADM and how long the student is with us. And I'll note as we go through which reports are on ADM versus head count. So head count is right, the number of students that we actually have that come through our building. So when you look at page 2, at the bottom, we do have a district-wide projected and actual enrollment for the district. This chart does exclude our Northern Star Online program, care and treatment and itinerant services. As you can see, as of October, we have almost 900 students, which compared to what we've projected so far for the year is just under 3 below our projections. And as I'll kind of reference throughout some of the charts, our enrollment continues to grow during the fiscal year. This is typically our low point for most of our programs. So it's very good odds we're going to be higher than what we've projected with our current enrollment for the year. So then I want to go in, if you go to page 3, we'll go in and break down kind of where that total enrollment comes from. So for the first program is our special ed setting 4 programs. And the chart is broken down by site. So you can see the enrollment by site and what we've projected for each site. So currently we're at, well, even before I go there, think about our projections for fiscal 24. So our special ed department works with all of your member district special ed directors to determine potential referrals going and returning students that will be coming to us. And that's done during the budget process. We talked about that back in, well, June for the overall, but some of our budget assumptions, I think that was back in March, where they're working, really, they're starting almost in December here. We'll start looking at and working with our member districts to start planning for next fiscal year. So this happened, the projections happened almost a year ago. So we're currently at 538 ADMs for our special ed programs, our setting 4 programs. And we're currently projecting 571. So we're about 33 under. But when you look at it next year, I think I'm going to add prior year actual for this point in time so you can see it. So I'm going to actually verbally share with you. We were at 465 at this point last year. So that's 73 higher than we were last year. So that's a significant increase. We were, anticipating this increase, just working with our member districts, our special ed department, and just knowing some of those referrals, et cetera. So, and then to kind of talking about how they continue to grow throughout the year. So last October, we were at 465. We ended the year at 485. So we increased 20 ADM from this point through the end of the year. So that does kind of show we have some room in our projections because that is what we build our staffing around as well, right? So we're assuming we can fill all of those positions. That's our ultimate goal, but be able to serve that 571. So we'll continue, the special ed department continues to have referrals from member districts, but we do have the capacity to take some more of those students during the year. And then I did mention at a prior, maybe during the facility study, or the facility update at the previous board meeting, but we are going through a facility capacity study with the enrollment, and then I'll get there with some of the charts that show a trend of how we're getting back to our highest point. Well, we're starting to feel a little bit of that pressure and pinch points in our buildings. Just right, we're starting to see that higher enrollment, spaces at a premium. And it's different throughout the building or throughout the district, right? Different sites feel a little bit more full than others. So we're going through this capacity study, which will working with our architect LHB, closely with our site principals, as well as our special ed department, and going through how are we using all of the spaces in our building, what programming is happening in each of those spaces. And then we look at our ratios for those types of programs. Are we using all of this space efficiently? Or can we move programs around throughout the district? So that is something that'll really help us for our future planning. Are we going to end up running out of space in the near future? And then what is our plan from that point in the future, right? To support member districts if they have future referrals, do we need to add space? Right? Do we get to a point of potential wait list, which we don't want to do? So we'll have more information with the capacity study in the future. Moving on to care and treatment program. We're currently at just over 80 ADM. We're projecting about 105. Last year at this point, we were at 84. So very similar. This one, again, is another one that as the year goes and services are accessed, that ADM changes and typically increases as the year goes. Our ALC programs, again, broken down by site, we're at 264 ADM or at 264, which is above our projection for this year by 17. And we're also 17 higher than we were last year. We were at 247 students. So this is a good sign with our ALC programs. This is one of our programs where we do run a deficit. Over the last 2 years, I believe we did have some ESSER funding and some of that federal funding that we got that helped support, that helped us break even. But the more enrollment we can generate in our ALC programs, the closer we get to break even. And then if we go to page 4, this is our Pathways and Career Tech programming. We're at 90, just over 96 ADM for fiscal 25. And again, this one is also over projection by 14. And we were at 64 in the prior year at this point. So we're 33 higher. And part of that, we anticipated some of that program, as you can see with the projections. We did add some programming in our health sciences, culinary arts, and computer technology this year. We did get some, they did get some grant funding there that is supporting some of the teaching staff at CTC. So hopefully we can continue to get our career and tech program continuing and growing enrollment in our programs there. And as you saw at your tables that you had on the bus is our next one, December 3rd. So go out and see it. I went last year. It was wonderful. North Star Online is our online program. We're currently at 378 ADM compared to 311 last year at this point. So we're 66 over projection. Over actual. We're projecting 1,257. So it seems really low that at this point in the year, but this significantly grows as the year goes on. As students enroll in the programs and access the programs and complete the courses. To kind of give you that example again, last year, right, 311, 312 at this point, they ended the year at 1,108. So based on where we're at, I would anticipate we'll probably be over those projections that we have for fiscal 25. Then moving on to page 5, we'll get into some of the trend. Just what does our enrollment look like over the past several years? So the first one, again, these are all on ADM basis yet. So total enrollment, which does include, this includes special ed, care and treatment, ALC programs, our pathway programs, and NSO. So you can see in fiscal 20 on our trend is our high point with 1,381 ADM. We're at 1,357. So we're getting close to what our high point was over the last 6 years. And we'll see some of where some of that is occurring when we get into to the program specific graph. So the next one at the bottom of the page is our special ed setting 4 programs. So this is over 8 years. We're only 2 below our fiscal 19 high point. And what you'll see too, what I'm going to point out when you look at this graph, right? And you're going to see it in most of the graphs between fiscal 20 and fiscal 21 is the year, right? That fiscal 21 is the first full year of the pandemic. So that really started the spring of fiscal 20 in March of 20. So that's where you'll see in a lot of the graphs, there's a drop, a pretty significant drop in some of them. I'm sure you've seen them in some of your member districts as well. Well, we're back to that pre-pandemic amount, and then more than likely going to exceed by year end and going into the future. Going to page 6, our ALC programs. Again, you can see that drop in fiscal 20. We did have a drop from 18 to 19, and that was where part of it was a member district opened an ALC program in their own district. So there was a drop, a natural drop there. And then our Gateway program moved from Brooklyn Center, the HTC, Brooklyn Park HTC campus to the Eden Prairie campus. Well, some of those, it's quite a difference in travel time for transportation. So we did not maintain all of that enrollment when that change occurred back in between 18 and 19. But you did see the drop in fiscal 21 with the pandemic. And again, we're slightly coming up here with our ALC programs, which is a good sign and hopefully something we can continue into the future. And then our North Star online program. Again, there was a significant drop in 21. Where a lot of districts in the pandemic started up there or were allowed to provide their own online instruction. So that's where that big drop. So it's taken several years to get back that where now we're actually at our highest point with North Star Online. So moving on to page 7 and getting into demographics of our student population.
Can I
And
just
this,
ask,
yeah. Yes, please.
So I noticed that the year underneath the enrollment data is 1 year behind what you've been saying fiscal year.
Correct. So, right, the number that you see on there, I think I might change it in the future, but it says, so example, that North Star Online one, the far left, it says 1017. That's that's fall enrollment, because right, we're using an October enrollment count for that year. So it's, the enrollment happened 10 October of 17, but that is fiscal year 18. When you think of it as a school year, right? Our fiscal year starts July 1 of 17 and ends June 30th of 18.
Okay.
And we talk of it, it's always fiscal 18. It's the year, the school year ends.
Right, I just wanted to make sure I was
Yep.
looking at the right.
Yep.
That's what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep. So then moving on to the demographics. So here we do, this is on a head count basis versus ADM now, when we get to these graphs. So here you can see a breakdown in the pie chart. So our largest student population for race and ethnicity is our Black African-American students, followed by white, and then Hispanic is our third largest. I know there was a question when we, at our last board meeting, when we were, Kevin Witherspoon, our Human Resources Director, was giving a presentation on some of our staff demographics. So I pulled a little bit of information, just trying to look back at his information that he presented to the board, because there was a question about how does our staff align to our students? So I went back to two of those graphs, and I don't have them in your packet, but I have them in front of me here. So I looked at licensed staff and our ESP education support professionals. So the first one, when I look at licensed staff, his chart, when we presented that meeting, 85% of our licensed staff are white, compared to 33% of our student population. I'm just going to go through the top three categories. The next was our Black African-American group. Staff are at 7.8% versus 38% for students. And then Hispanic was our next largest, where 2.15% of staff are Hispanic, and then 12% of our student population. And before I get to ESP, I'll come back. So keep that in mind. And then when we go to our ESPs, 33% of our ESPs are white, which matches our student population for fiscal 25. 53% are Black African American, which is very close, or is higher than our 38% for our student population. And then 7.5% of staff are Hispanic, compared to the 12% for student population. So our licensed staff, not quite as close, but our ESP staff is much closer. And then I did want to point out, I don't know if you've read it, it is on the board agenda, but the November AMSD Connection newsletter has a report in there from Pelsby on the licensed staff. And they have a nice chart in there where they were looking at the state's efforts in diversifying the state's licensed teaching workforce. So I compared that back to our licensed staff, what they had from a statewide basis. It was just a chart. They have it, you'll see it in your board packet. So when looking at the Pelsby statewide numbers for licensed staff, 83% are white compared to our 85, so very similar. Black African American, 1.66% statewide versus our 7.8, and then 1.93 for the Pelsby report statewide for Hispanic versus our 2.15. So we are have better gains, I guess, and are doing better from compared to a statewide basis. But again, there's still a lot of work to do, right? We still want to get that licensed staff. And I believe you're actually going to hear a report this evening about some of those efforts of trying to get our staff that are in front of our students to match our student population better. And then at the bottom of page 7 is free and reduced. Our population, or identify our count for our student population that are on free or reduced lunches. So approximately 60% of our students are on free and reduced. And a lot of this is through the direct certification program now, right? That started occurring just a few years ago, which increased numbers for a lot of districts. So a few years ago, there was a pretty big increase in our compensatory revenue that districts received. And that could change when we think of going into fiscal 26. So there is currently a hold harmless calculation that happens for the compensatory education. And I just wanted to kind of point that out because this is the figures that drive that calculation. And you're probably seeing it in your member districts as well. But there's a potential for a decrease for a lot of districts because there's currently a hold harmless for fiscal 25. So they took either your lowest or the greater of your fiscal 25 free and reduced numbers or your fiscal 24. So they took the greater of the two. So as applications decreased, because of the free Minnesota Meals program, right, it was harder to get families to fill out the applications. Some of those numbers are dropping. Well, they're currently talking about going to a direct cert only, free and reduced on the compensatory revenue calculation. So that's going to end up reducing the revenue for a lot of districts. Right now, I did a calculation for our district, and it's not set. This is part of part of the AMSD platform to potentially change this for future years because there is going to be a lot of districts that have that. It doesn't affect us as much because we don't have as many applications, but in my previous district where I came from, over 20%, about 21% of our free and reduced were part of the application. So if they went to a direct cert compensatory calculation, we would have lost $500,000 in that district. So as an example here, there is a potential for up to $200,000. And part of it is the direct certs. We do have some applications, but part of it is the hold harmless calculation as well. So our compensatory actually would have went down in 25, but because of the hold harmless, it kept us up. So it makes it look worse or like a bigger drop because of that change in the calculation. So hopefully with some lobbying and working with our legislature that we can either reincorporate or continue the hold harmless or figure out a different calculation of not just using the direct certification. And then the final two, just to kind of end, we do have a couple of tables on page 8 and 9. So page 8 is again on a head count basis. This just shows the breakdown of our enrollment for some of our different programs, including the member by member district and then a total for non-members. So you can just kind of see, I'm not going to go through each, but you can see there is in the special ed, we did have the 72 increase in head count as well, similar to what we did in ADM. And then our ALC programs had the same type of increase on a head count basis as ADM. And then if you go to the page 9, this is between July 1st and October 17th. These were referrals that we received from member districts in that time period. So it's a total of 77, which compares to last year, we had 73 in that same time period. So very similar. But we're continuing to get those from member districts in your special ed departments. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate it. Ruthie, go ahead.
What would be the reason why Brooklyn Center would refer a person to this ALC Academy versus keeping them in our own?
I think superintendent's going to handle that one.
Yep. Great question. So with ALCs, it's actually not a referral. So ALCs, families can choose and students can choose where they would want to be served in their ALC. So it's really kind of a choice. And it could be around programming. It could be around where the student lives. but personal reasons.
Dan.
I have a few questions, so I'm happy to trade off with some. And perhaps for Superintendent Dow, this would be a better question, for you. Sorry, Brian.
No, it's okay.
But I'm looking at page 8 and I'm seeing the number of students in the North Star Online program. And I'm kind of noticing that it's not necessarily proportional to population. And so just to kind of understand, why, in districts that are, smaller, we're seeing more enrollment, just to kind of understand. Forgive my ignorance because, I'm not immersed in other districts. I'm just immersed in Wayzata. So that's certainly is an avenue for progress there. I'm just to kind of understanding, why is it not proportional to population?
Yeah, great question. So one thing is Northern Star Online is not a school, it's a program. So, we work with member districts in regards to, how can we support the extension of your current middle school, high school program? And so it really is about offerings that you have that we can complement. And it may be like, for example, it might be a Spanish program or this year district's having difficulty finding a Spanish teacher to teach Spanish for. And so we might support. So it could fluctuate. But it also is about pathways within each school district and how we connect to that. And so, but our team works with the counselors within each of yours and seeing how we can work collaboratively for students to work their pathway to graduation, whatever that looks like. So it's a choice.
So is it fair to say that, like a smaller district might not be able to offer the same breadth of programming? So NSO might be an opportunity for a small district to offer something that a larger district can offer themselves.
It
So-
could, and yes.
Like in one,
that
I
could
mean,
be.
there's multiple reasons,
Yeah.
but one of them that would make sense is why larger districts might not use it as, much, a larger district might not use it as much as a smaller district might be that.
Hey, we don't use it at all.
Right, it's a
We
choice.
have it on.
It's a-
Also,
Yep, it's a choice and it's also, some districts after COVID kept on to some online programming. And so that where you saw our enrollment drop, some districts then chose to either close their online school or close options of online learning. And we picked some of that up too. So that's what you're seeing the shift in. So it really is a choice. It is a collaboration. And just some districts may choose to access Northern Star and some may not.
Like in Eden Prairie, we had an online school in development before COVID hit. And when COVID hit, we just accelerated that. So that was part of our plan as a district is we actually have a K-12 online school.
Dan, did you have another question?
Yeah, I have 2 more, but so I can trade off with some.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, and then, I think, Brian, you mentioned, you're doing a facility study. There might have to be expansions if we have, an increased enrollment. So just to kind of, reiterate, obviously people hear, oh, there's gonna be construction or, potentially, renovations or whatever it might be, in the district, how does that happen? Like, how is that, for the member districts, how are they going to contribute to that? How is that paid for?
You want to take it?
Can I take that one too? Thank you. So right now we're doing the facility study to look at, are we maximizing and using our space in accordance to programming? What would that referral trajectory need to occur before we even think about we're running out of space? So this is a very, very, very proactive approach to pre-planning if the continued trajectory of referrals go as it's currently going. In the meanwhile, we're also talking, so I will talk to the superintendents know we're doing a facility study. I'll enter into conversation because it is all about our space is based on your district's referrals. So it's a collaborative effort. We wouldn't do it without first conversations with the superintendents, the directors of special education, thinking about what does that mean for each of the districts and what some possibilities with our current physical sites. So we're really far off on decision making on that, but just more trying to be proactive as we see the trajectory go up for enrollment.
And then my final question, I was gonna make a third time, so charmed that.
Yeah, there
Veronica
you go.
answered. But, so in terms of just like looking at, projections, you know, kind of like, how do you formulate that? So what are your inputs as you try to forecast out to understand, you know, what are our needs going to be?
Oh, great question. So there's a couple processes that are in place that each year you are also changing as a district. And so we ask the superintendents to fill out if there's gonna be any kind of significant changes into the future year for planning. So are you gonna open a new program? Are you gonna open a new ALC? We're here to support your growth too, and wherever you go, and then we can plan for it. So there's processes in place and then conversations. What we're looking at, a lot of it has to do with Melissa in regards to the directors of special education. That's where our special education referrals come, and that's very impactful in regards to space because of the low student staff ratio and space and the large amount of space needed. And so Melissa currently is working with directors of special education to talk about the referral process, to talk about the capacity. You know, we try never to have a waiting list in District 287. And so in order to do that, we always have to pre-plan, let alone think about staffing and making sure our classrooms are staffed for those projections. So I'd love to say it's this beautiful mathematical equation, but I think it's history, patterns, needs within the communities. And we can have one district refer more one year than another year. So it fluctuates, but there's been enough of a pattern to referrals that we make pretty close projections, as you can see.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions or comments for Brian or the superintendent? Go ahead, Michael.
I just have one quick comment. Thank you very much for the information breakdown of the staff along with the student population. I think I was the one who asked that question. I was pleased to see, even though their staff licensing component is a little bit lower than where we'd like it to be, but the ESPs are in line with where we are, even slightly better. That's great. And I think that's a great statistic that I think we can continue to look at to see as build our own programs and things that we're doing to kind of incentivize and try to drive some of our talent to the licensing part of it. We'll continue to move in the direction that we say strategically we want. So I appreciated that. Thank you.
Right. I don't see any others, and we still have a lot of important folks to hear from. So we're going to say thank you to you.
You're welcome.
We are going to do a slight modification. Want to especially thank our visitors who just sat with us for a little bit of extra time. I wish I had thought in advance to flip the order because we're going to do the American Indian Education Program approval first. Yes, yes. Like I said, I am sorry I didn't think about it earlier, but we've got you now. So I'm going to invite Kiara Zachary up to do this presentation for us, and then she will introduce all of our special guests who have done a great job of hanging out with us so far.
Not know why we're so excited when you're here.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for your patience, Mel. You did a great job. Good evening again, Madam Chair, Superintendent Dowd, and board members. I am here to introduce to you our 2024-2025 American Indian Education Aid Program. With me, I have one of our board members, Mel Jones, and our, come on now. And our staff member, Dania Brown Castro. They are members of our APAC, our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. Introduce yourself. No, go ahead. You have a lot of things to go right ahead. Yes, okay. You did it. Or you can do it.
My name is Mel. I'm a senior at NAC. I'm very happy that we have this affinity group starting. It's a place for us as a Native students to come together in a safe place to be with one another and learn about our heritage and culture.
Thank you.
We'll come back and say if they have some questions. Is that okay?
I also play basketball.
Yeah.
I remember that from
Yeah, we
last
remember
time.
that. We remember you.
Man, I remember.
Yes, no, yes, I remember. So here goes our American Indian student enrollment by site. So you can see based upon site where we have the most where we have the most American Indian students, and that would be our South Education Center. These graphs show you a both gender breakdown of students, and then American Indian students by grade. We have the most in 12th grade. I do want to make one caveat about our gender breakdown for students. The student information system that we have, Synergy, we actually just made the update to allow for more than 2 genders. And so when we pulled this data before, that wasn't allowed, and there's a process to changing gender. So this could look different, but just to say that. Based on what is possible to select, this is the breakdown we have. So because of the number of students that we have enrolled at District 287, we receive funds from the state of Minnesota to provide culturally affirming opportunities, and we have to provide while we get the grant, while we get the funding based on our enrollment, we have to provide a plan to spend said funds and submit that to the state by November 30th. The plan has to have 5 components, and then the 6th component is really talking about what are the goals. And so what we have here is a summary of the 5 components that are required within each of our plan. Within the plan, these 5 components and the activities that are in the components were developed by members of our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, including Mel. So the first area required in our plan is to provide post-secondary support preparation for our students that identify as Indigenous. Our goal is that we foster post-secondary aspirations through college visits, right? So we think about planning, again, that the largest percentage of our student population by grade is 12th graders. And so we're really thinking about what is the next step for you, and can you see yourself, right, in post-secondary education. So we have college visits. We have a college visit, a plan to Red Lake Nation College that integrates students' cultural heritage and culturally affirming practices. And their programming ensures cultural relevance and academic readiness. We'll help support them mainly through, you'll see a theme here is mainly through our affinity spaces. So Dania Brown Castro will speak to some of the programming that she has prepared for the school year, that she and Brent Dice, who is our equity and inclusion coordinator, they have bi-monthly meetings at each of our sites with students. And so we're using that as a venue to help prepare our students for each of the activities that we outline in the areas. We expect that once students go to a college and recognize that there is a culturally affirming college for them, that they'll have interest in that college and a strength of cultural identity and academic readiness. It's a part of like the see it, be it, believe it, right? The second part is supporting academic achievement for American Indian students. So we want to enhance academic achievement through culturally responsive reading groups. Brent gave us a little bit of this earlier today, but we have bi-weekly discussions with Indigenous works by Indigenous authors. And again, we'll use our affinity groups as an opportunity to do this. So there's a big push towards literacy and building fluency. What's unique about this practice is that we are leveraging audiobooks as a means to uplift cultural practices around storytelling and auditory learning. And so while the printed materials are available to students, they'll be engaging with audiobooks in their sessions. The third component is to make curriculum relevant to the needs, interests, and cultural heritage of American Indian students. And so APAC will collaborate with our teaching and learning department and select materials to be implemented and integrated into our ethnic studies programming, which we are working on this year. Also looking to incorporate specific materials that they've already identified, one of which is The Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. The next is to provide positive reinforcement of the self-image to American Indian pupils. Our affinity groups really allowing over the space. You can hear how important that work is and how that space is for Mel, for Mel and our other students, of course. The work and the plans that we talked about during our meetings and developing the plan, right? Our students had a bunch of ideas on things that they wanted to do and places we could go and activities that they wish that would happen during this time. What's been, I'll say, a challenge is that while we grow more intentionally in integrating American Indian education in our more general programming, we have some of our sites where the population is spread wide across various grades and the population is smaller, right? So at South Education Center, right, we have the most, and that's 12 students. And they're spread across grades in a building that serves students K through 22. And so again, by facilitating an affinity space, we're able to create more intention across grades, right? And we're able to do things that are appropriate across multiple developmental ages. Some of the things that they've talked about are like beading, learning about the 7 grandfathers, introducing storytelling. One of our students wanted us to build a sweat lodge, and I said, let's pause on that, right? But thinking about how, excited they were about having the opportunity to share what they know and learn with one another, because there isn't that intentional mechanism for them to come together. And that it does feel good for them to know that there are other students in the same building, even though they may not see each other all the time. Intercultural awareness is storytelling with elders and art workshops. So again, thinking about beading and some of the other things that they are really excited to share with one another, and to promote understanding and respect across cultures, looking at patterns across storytelling and some of the the tales and archetypal themes that we see across cultures within that storytelling. So thinking about the ways in which wisdom shows up through animals, for example, or other things that we can discuss as we read or listen to stories in our groups. Here are some upcoming dates of the work that we've got ahead of us. So we have our first field trip to Migizi happening December 12th. Our next APAC meeting will be next week at South Education Center. And then we have an affinity group scheduled for next week as well. You have any questions for us?
So much for being here. Questions or comments? Go ahead.
Mel, I remember you from last time. You were wearing your Kayla McBride jersey. How was the basketball going?
Good.
Good, great. So you just were, I know, I saw you looking at the slides and listening to Director Zachary, and I'm just curious to know, like, what is What has been your experience of the things that were just described?
Like back at my like homeschool, like Osseo, they did, it was called Indian Education, and um um I like what they provided, and we used to go on trips and stuff like we're gonna do now here, and so yeah.
So you're gonna get to do that in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks, go on a trip. Super. And what grade did you say you were in?
Senior.
That's what I thought. I thought I heard you say that. So we're gonna.
I'm a senior citizen.
So we're gonna see you at graduation soon?
Yes.
Awesome. I can't wait to see you there.
Thank you.
I have another question because you're a senior citizen. And the Area 1, which I am so excited about, which is really supporting students and thinking about what happens next. And so excited about the visit to Red Lake Nation College. Is that the new one in Minneapolis?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you most excited to see your experience at Red Lake Nation College as part of that visit?
Like what they do there
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. Is it something that you think you would be interested in doing next year?
Yeah. Like going to like a college next year.
Yeah.
Cause I've been doing so good in school. Like I got like last year I got all A's, and now not semester, but quarter I had all A's. So in all last year I had all A's. I didn't get no B's or C's. So last year I moved to this district back in like 2021 or something, in my middle of my 8th grade year, and I got like my behavior has changed since then. So my grades have been going up, not well going good, and I've been doing a lot of like last year I took a culinary class at HTC for 1 trimester, and I got a B plus. And I don't know if you know his name. His name is Chef Will. He was really funny. So yeah.
That's fantastic. I feel like we're so lucky to have had you here 2 years in a row now. And to be able to just get to know. you
Yeah,
a
when I was
little
at my
bit.
old school, I never went to board meetings like
Yeah.
this, like, and talked about like my native native people,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Well, we so appreciate you being here. It's really wonderful.
yeah,
And
thank you.
You're good. You're welcome again next year.
Thank you.
You'll always be welcome. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Shannon.
I just had a quick question. I know, thank you for being here and for the presentation on the details of the program. And I know in Hopkins, we struggled with the forms for identifying how students self-identify it, because is it still that you have to pick one? Like, so you have to, so there might be more native identifying students in our schools, but they have to identify as something else. Is that the case?
Yeah,
Federal
yes,
tribe.
the federal, yes, as a federal tribal affiliation on the the school registration forms, if you choose like 2 or more races and indigenous is one of them and you choose something else, it's not in the same general count. So there could be more. When we pulled the demographics, was it indigenous only or just yes, so when the demographics that we saw are the students that identified as indigenous only, American Indian only.
So is there an effort at all are we getting the word out, I guess I'm saying, for those students who might want to be part of the groups and the programs, even if they haven't identified?
You want to talk about that?
Or they couldn't.
This is just a
identify?
quick.
Yeah, I mean, because we do have where there, some students are 2 or more, so I do check in with them. I know me and Brent went to the schools, introduced ourselves. Some students just don't identify. So we, we understood that they didn't want to maybe partake, but those that did, then we just told them when our next meeting would be. So that's what we've been doing this week. So.
Good. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Quick question from the parents. So from
I don't know what's happening. It's
Right, there's something. It's somewhere.
Is it your computer by your microphone?
I was just asking, even though with the APEC group and so on and so forth, but how have the parents been responding to the efforts and changes that we're trying to bring about within our community at 287? Do you have any insight as far as, I know it's still kind of an evolving process, but do you have any kind of commentary about what the parents are engaging with, or how they have an opinion about what we're doing?
So the parents provided a lot of insight in our previous year. This year we've reached out through phone calls, and received parent feedback, mainly just wanting to know that we have a program and that they were excited about it. The one thing that we've heard from parents is that they're wanting a connection and more sort of like collaboration across the like our member districts, right? Like, so what are we doing with, are there opportunities for their students that are at 287 to go to things in the member district and then vice versa? That requires us to collaborate across districts and to connect as colleagues, which I'm open to. So, but that's really what it is. I think it is a busy time of school year. We haven't created a cadence or expectation yet. I think that families know that we are ready to engage, and it's an opportunity for them. And so we'll continue to reach out. We've tried email and Blackboard and phone calls and all the things, but we'll continue to make connections with parents. Jennifer Powell is our chair, and we've been able to connect with her via email several times this year.
The reason for my question was I just remember both from 287, but also specifically to Edina's experience, to where, when you have to file the report every year and so on and so forth. I know in 287, we had a positive, Edina, we actually didn't. And so we've been making some changes and so on and so forth. And I just know how important, not only for the student experience, but also for the parental experience, making that connection is really critically important to really check ourselves in terms of how impactful are we being on the goal that we talked about. So the 5 areas are great. I love that. Clearly we have got the right program going. It's just a matter of that connection is really important from that standpoint, given that we're going to every year have to be able to get our evaluation as to whether or not the parent group actually believes that we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another strategy that Dania and Brent are employing is, if we get the students involved and we get the student program up and running, they'll go home and tell their parents, and then they'll have they'll have another reason to engage with us when they hear about it.
Yeah.
And so they were like, let's not wait until we get parents involved. Let's really try to connect hard with our students and have them go home and tell about the work that we're doing.
Good.
Ruthie.
Thank you for the presentation. Very good. I'm wondering, with our member districts, would there be a time, or maybe there has been a time, where you come together with member districts that have American Indian Advisory Committee?
Yeah. Since last year was our first year, Don Voss and I collaborated, and we split our member districts, and we reached out and we asked about what their programming was, if there's and we had several conversations. I'm not sure if there's like an American Indian Ed meeting that happens. I'd love to be a part of it if such a place exists.
Whether you're planning one.
I'm planning one. I had not had that. No, I haven't had that. I haven't had that thought. Again, we could organize something, but I think I would love to see if there's another, or if there's some other organization that exists, right? If there's another, maybe it's more like grassroots or not inauthentic into that practice space before I say
We have
I'll
one.
put it on the calendar.
Yeah, where their meeting seems to be becoming more active now.
Okay.
advisory group in our district.
Yeah.
So just wonder how they can connect more.
Yeah.
Strengthen their strategies and activities.
I would absolutely love to join in on that conversation and collaborate with colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you especially for waiting and supporting Mel as Mel was waiting with us. It was wonderful to have everybody here and excited for the next time, which will be the vote of concurrence, right?
Yeah, February.
Okay,
Few
fantastic.
months. Yeah.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kiara, you get to
I will stay.
stay.
I will
Yep.
stay right here.
Because next up we have talent development introduction and progress report.
Yeah. I get to have you all meet another one of my teammates.
We've already heard great things about today. Yeah.
Yes, we have. We have. So here I am here again with another presentation, you all. This is like a very exciting work for me, our talent development work. And so I'll provide sort of like an overview of like what does talent development mean, and how we are employing this strategy and this work in 287. I also have Maya Yang here with me, who is our program analyst, who's been helping us create some baseline data. So as we develop programming, it's important that we have baseline data so we know the impact of the work that we're doing. And we also want to be informed, right, about not just trying things to be trying things, but we want to be responsive to the data that, to the trends that we're seeing and the baseline data that we produce. So what is talent development? Talent development is a process of helping employees develop skills and knowledge they need to achieve their own career goals and contribute to the district's success, right? Like, we should want that for all of our staff. But that includes things like mentoring, coaching, professional development, leadership development, succession planning, leadership opportunities, and on-the-job learning. And so our talent development program really does encapsulate all of these things. But this is, and some, I'll go back. Some of these things we have because statutorily we have to have them, like mentoring. Some of these things we have, some of these things we've embedded into our organization because we know that they increase retention. So for example, we have, and this is not the work of the talent development department, but our instructional and operational leadership meetings that meet monthly are opportunities for our leaders to grow and develop, right? We do a blend of like technical meeting things and then professional development. So these are things that many organizations have. Talent development is a part of what many organizations have. We're building intention around that specifically for our ESPs, and we'll tell you why in a second. So this work is aligned with District 287's goals, values, and other initiatives, right? So it aligns with our values regarding authenticity and inclusion. I want you to think about what we talked about, like how we define talent development. It aligns with our Achieving Academic Success strategic plan onboarding goal, and it aligns with our Equity Inclusion Grant Initiative, closing educational opportunities that, from MDE. So in all ways that it should make sense for an organization to take on this work, District 287 has made it make sense. How it aligns with our values, right? With authenticity, how we define authenticity here is that we believe organizational authenticity happens when each person shows up as their true self, embraces the uniqueness of others, and creates a safe environment. Talent development programming provides staff with intentional support and connections with other staff to create safety, physical and psychological. And inclusion is when we believe inclusion exists when everyone has equitable access and the opportunity to be acknowledged and validated. Talent development provides equitable access to professional learning and advancement opportunities, right? Our strategic plan. So our year one Achieving Academic Success goal is supporting our talent development staff are supporting onboarding and ESP preparedness through trainings and mentoring. So the goal is that there is a comprehensive system of onboarding that is developed for all staff. And our talent development division is helping support that work. Our overall general goal, right, of cultivating equity and inclusion for staff is that staff create a district culture that celebrates diversity and advances inclusion. This means that staff can appreciate each other's roles and have clear opportunities for growth and advancement, right? So very broadly, the goal is that we want to advance inclusion, and by advancing inclusion, we mean providing equitable access to opportunities and resources. We know that we'll reach that when staff know what opportunities and resources they have access to, and as a district, we can provide them a pathway to get those. Make sense? The Closing Educational Opportunities Grant. So the Minnesota Department of Education released RFPs for funds for school districts to create more equitable school policy structures, practices, and curricular offerings in order to reduce an equitable distribution of resources that impact learning opportunities and learning opportunity gaps. Brian just talked to us about the, while our ESP population is similar, our non-licensed staff, and our ESP population more broadly matches our student population, our licensed population does not. And so MDE drafted this grant program so that districts could create programming that can recruit and retain paraprofessionals from racial, ethnic, and linguistic backgrounds represented in student populations to strengthen relationships within students, families, and other members of the community. This lets me know that this is not a phenomenon, like this is a phenomenon and is not unique to District 287. Across the state, we know that our paraprofessionals are the most racially diverse educational staff population. And in order for our students and families to have the racial and cultural representation within their education system, we have to recruit and retain paraprofessionals and then, right, grow them into other positions. But the way that we can do that immediately is by having a program in which we can do both. Here goes our folks. There's me up there. And then our folks that are really, really doing the work. We have our program analyst, Maya Yang, our professional support liaison, Daniel Brown Castro, who supports NEC and SEC, and then also Melissa Coleman, who supports ABEC and West. Maya also supports our ESPs with NSO, Care and Treatment, and CTC. So this is the work that we've been doing thus far. This is a picture of a PD that we provided for ESPs. But we've developed baseline demographic, promotion, and retention data. You've seen a lot of that already. We'll show you some more. We've supported staff and assisted in district-wide para-educator assessment completion. So as you know, MDE enforced new regulations regarding staff highly qualified status if you are support students in receiving special education services. And so Dania and Melissa and a number of other staff have supported ESPs hand in hand in passing the paraeducator to become highly qualified. We'll talk about what the impact on that organizationally is, and it's pretty astounding work. We provided professional learning sessions during workshop week, and then on our 2 professional development days that we've had thus far, September 27th and November 8th, specifically for ESPs. We conducted ESP focus groups, and we'll share our findings with you there. Again, we want to be really informed about the programming that we develop, and so we went directly to the source to determine what is it and how is it that we can better support you. And we also are collaborating with special education teacher development team to collect program evaluation data on our current mentoring for licensed staff, our mentoring model for licensed staff and ESPs. Again, so that we are able to be responsive to what is working really, really well in those programs, and then how can we update and change them to be better for and more effective for our staff. So we were drafting this presentation together and talking about all the things that we've done. And I just want to let you know that the program analyst position and the professional support liaison positions were new to this school year. Dania, Melissa, and Maya were all hired in August. And it is mid-November. So I really, really like, folks ask about like, oh, wow, the equity team has expanded, and you're like, how does it feel to do so much? I'm floored. I'm really astounded by the work that my team does. It's what energizes me, quite frankly, is that if we can do this much in 3 months, what could it look like if our team is together in 3 years, right? Like gives me goosebumps a little bit. So I'm gonna let Maya talk about the data that she's been able to find and show off her work a little bit.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I have to warn you, I'm not as funny as the students. So you've all seen this data before, I think. So I'm just going to recap on the important points, which the first thing I dove into when I started was analyzing the retention and promotion rates. So I did the calculations for the past 3 school years. And you can see that there was a dip in 2020, sorry, my vision's kind of bad, but 2023. But it came back up for both all employees, the retention rate for all employees and for ESPs. But you can see that with all 3 years, I think the 1 year they're both closely tied, but the ESP retention rate tends to be lower than for all employees at 82.5%. And then as far as promotions, we did see quite a few of ESP promotions last school year. So this is for last school year, 23 to 24. 23 ESPs were promoted, and then 15 non-ESPs were promoted. And we'll see where those ESPs got promoted to in the next slide here. And I think you've also seen this before. So these are the positions that the ESPs were promoted to. And so on the top there, 8 were promoted to instructor, and then admin support, student safety coach, family engagement specialist, professional support liaisons, Melissa and Dania. And then 8 of them are in the iTrack apprentice program. And they're also disaggregated by race. So you can see that although all 8 of the instructors that were, all the 8 of the ESPs that became instructors did identify as non-Hispanic, Latino, white, we do have a good amount of people of color in the staff of color in the iTrack apprentice program. So hoping to close that gap, those gaps. And then this is a new chart. I was told that the board wanted to see how the race distributes by age group. And so I was pretty shocked to see the really clear trend there, that as the age group moves up, then the proportion of non-Hispanic, Latino, white gets larger, and the staff of color decreases. So, and then the next slide shows the race distribution by tenure status, and also a clear pattern there as there's a higher proportion of non-Hispanic, Latino, white staff that are tenured as compared to staff of color. And then you can see the not tenured and not eligible due to their, I think it's due to their contract. Yeah. Mhm. Did you want to take over for this?
So we had 171 ESPs pass the paraeducator in the first couple months of school, which is a large, which is a large feat. We have 27 that we are working with to pass. And so part of that looked like Dania and Melissa coordinating and proctoring tests, and also supporting, like looking at the data, seeing where if a staff person didn't pass the first time, and then supporting them through by having them take notes on certain things, go through modules, reading tests, lots of things, but really intentionally supporting staff in doing that. There is a pay increase contract in the contract for when ESPs either pass the paraeducator or receive a certain amount of college credits. And so what that means is that with those 171 ESPs that have passed, it'll have a total salary increase of $177,000 per staff. And on average, that's a 77-cent increase for staff, which can be like very impactful, for our ESPs. So I'll talk a little bit about focus groups. So a part of the Closing Educational Opportunities grant is that we were going to develop an employee retention program for our ESPs. Our ESP retention data is actually pretty decent when you think about it. 82.5% isn't bad organizationally when you think about like what any other organization would experience in turnover. But again, there are specific pockets based on our demographic data that we can be better in. And so part of what we've recognized in our data review is that our ESPs are young ESPs of color are with us, have the highest rate of turnover, right? And because our young ESPs of color have the highest rate of turnover, while they were still with us at the beginning of the school year, we wanted to ask them questions, not just young ESPs of color, but all of our ESPs. We wanted to ask them about their experiences and how we really can better support them in that first few months of their time here with us. We asked them questions. I think all of the questions are in here actually. So you'll see the questions that we asked and then some of the trends that we found. So the first question is, what do you look forward to at work every day? What makes you come to work? And the most common response, how you can read this chart, Maya helped me with that, is that out of the 8 groups, out of 8 groups, so the top one has all 8, right? Where out of 8, how many of those groups did this theme emerge is how we can read this data. So seeing students and being with students was in 8 for 8 groups. It's the most popular response. Teamwork and the relationships with staff is our highest response. So our ESPs are really motivated and enjoy the people they work with, students and staff. What are the biggest challenges that we face? And the biggest challenges is the nature of the job and lack of communication. The good thing is that lack of communication is something that we can fix, right? And also the nature of the job too. We serve students that have complex needs, and there are things that we can structurally do to support one another better, especially if the people are what are driving us to. So really thinking about like what it means to be an ESP and how we respond and take care of one another, knowing the job conditions. Yeah. Now you make me feel like it was fake, Juanine, as if you were clicking. Now we're in the sync instead of technology. Maybe I'll try. Should I turn it off and turn it on again?
I'll just do it. You want to try it?
It's not going. Oh, You, okay. So how do you feel about the support that you receive from teachers, admin, and other staff? So most of our staff feel like they have good team support, and some of our staff expressed negative feeling towards admin and that they needed more support from their administrators. That was you again. I even added extra emphasis. So because we are a smaller team, we weren't able to hit all of our sites on our last PD day. So we asked similar questions in a stay survey with Northern Star Online, Care and Treatment, and our and CTC. And this is the data that we received from those sites. These 3 sites have our smallest ESP population. Our 4 education centers have much larger ESP populations. Between the 4 sites, I believe we have 6, 10, 14 between those 4 programs, where we could have 14 ESPs in one program at one of our sites, right? The number of responses that we get. 20, okay, thank you. Data off the dome. It's amazing. So we have 14 responses, 23 total, still much smaller population. We asked questions that you would find in general stay interviews. So the Center of Economic Inclusion created a community, like a employee wellness indicator, and they asked some questions around like community connectedness, job satisfaction, and some other things. And so we pulled from Center of Economic Inclusion in order to design this survey for staff. All staff will have an opportunity to do this, but we are using multiple modalities to gain information. And so we'll do focus groups with one group, and then stay surveys, and then switch. So in the first graph here, we had more ESPs respond at CTC. That's what that says there. Most of our ESPs that took this survey identified as white. The most popular age range was 45 to 54. Most of them lived 10 to 14 miles away from their primary site. And you'll see these bookends, right? We noticed this in another data dive that we did when it says how long have you been in your current role as an ESP. There's this drop that happens in the middle of our data. We hire a lot of staff and they have shorter tenures, or we hire staff and they are with us for a lot longer time. So our retention efforts are extremely important, especially for those people in that middle section, right? And so that they can move across the sections. So these are the responses for staff at CTC. Yes.
So this is actually for all 3 sites, but this was actually taken from a dashboard. So it was like, if I could link to it, this is the Power BI dashboard but this is just a still shot, a screenshot. But if we go to the next slide, actually, because we don't have to go through each site by site, but I thought it was interesting to see like which site rated higher than which site. And NSO consistently rated the highest on all the questions, all the rating questions that we asked. And I think Care and Treatment consistently rated the lowest. You can go next slide. Or sorry, actually you can stay here. Some of the questions we asked, you could go back, yeah. So some of the questions we asked are like, rate your level of agreement on a scale of 1 to 5 with these statements, like, I have clear goals and objectives in my current role, or District 287 enforces rules fairly among staff. There is a clear career path for me at District 287. Those are the kind of statements we asked them to rate. I think you can go next. And then again, this is the the overall responses that we got from the sites. And then if you can go the next slide over. Again, like showing which site rated higher, NSO is again the highest, there. Yeah, I think they rated, on some questions, they rated like 5 all across the board, so. All right, you can go next. And I think here is, it's just showing, the staff that were hired, the new staff that were hired within the past 2 years to try to get a better insight on how our mentorship and onboarding processes are doing, and what percentage of them were hired in the beginning of the school year versus the middle of the school year, and then how their responses differed. So this would look different for the school site ESPs, I think. So this is again just CTC, care and treatment, and NSO. All right, you can go next slide. Okay. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Put that down. So based on this data, what's next is that we'll have continued collaboration with our special education to reimagine mentorship in 287. We'll continue focus groups for our ESPs that we didn't capture on September 27th. We're going to be matching and identifying growth opportunities for ESPs, and then create a multi-pronged year-long professional development plan for ESPs to begin in 25-26. So part of where this comes from is the data that we just reviewed, right? That there are clear growth opportunities for staff that were hired in the middle of the year to have more intentional onboarding and mentorship. This also aligns to the needs that were expressed within our strategic plan engagement last year when we developed the goals for this year. Also, because we have this gap in tenure, right? Like these high swings in tenure for our ESPs, it's important that we create a professional development structure that's multi-pronged so that staff don't feel as if they're getting the same thing over and over again, or they get things that are not relevant to them. But there are also some things that our staff need to know in order to be successful here. And so to have that plan for them for the entire year is important. One of the other things that we've noticed in our data is that our ESPs are least likely to come on professional development days because they don't necessarily feel that all of the topics are relevant to them. That there are more tailored towards licensed instructional staff. So we even see that our licensed student support staff often feel left out of some of the building-wide offerings, right? And so an opportunity for us to engage them on those professional development days is for it to be more tailored and specific to our ESP population. Anything else? That's what we have. Do you have any questions?
All right. Heidi, go ahead.
Just on the last thing you just mentioned, you say they're less likely to show up. These are not required professional development days?
There is.
Yeah, okay.
Just to add to that, they have, based on their contract, days. And then their professional development days that are licensed staff only, and it's pretty optional.
Okay, so they're not showing up to those options.
And also, they may not be, they may call in sick on a PD day that they're required to be in.
I see.
Dan,
No, not a question. I can,
I'm sorry.
not a question. I can wait.
Okay,
Just gonna-
go ahead.
Super quick one. For the highly qualified, is there anything in that process that a employee would have to pay for, right? Like qualification wise?
No, the district assumed the cost of the paraeducator licenses.
When you
Yes.
showed the slide about the money
Yes,
back,
and then,
I was
and
like,
we
wait,
also, yes, and we also embedded time in our workshop week. And then we worked with building administrators so that staff were taking the test on during their duty day and not having to do it outside of their duty day.
Michael.
On the retention part, especially in that dip that you talked about in that sort of between first and probably third years, kind of like where you saw the most of it. What I hear today is a lot of what we're trying to do district-wide in terms of to provide that support. But ultimately, it also requires something at the site level management and the feel there and so on and so forth, which the district in and of itself can't do from that standpoint. So I'm just curious, because you didn't get into that, and that's not necessarily your particular area of responsibility, but I'm just curious from a site standpoint, what is going hand in hand with everything that you just have talked about and the next steps you're going to be doing? Are there other things that organizationally at the site level part with the principals and the leadership there will go hand in hand with all the things that we just heard?
I'll share a little bit. Part of it is the onboarding that we're building is district job, building job. So we're really saying, how do we delineate what's our role, your role in onboarding within a district culture and within a site culture. The other part is the mentoring is at a site level. And then work around all the work that we're doing around equity and identification. We're really talking about how do we create that welcoming environment? So just what you went through as a retreat, some of the feedback, a lot of the feedback was not feeling included, not feeling seen, not feeling valued for what they brought to the space every day.
Yeah.
And so, deliberate conversations around Dr. Tanya Allen and Dr. Lodge Rogers, who are mentoring principals, as well as professional development, and then sharing this information too.
Yeah, I mean, the follow would be on the data that you provided where it talked about communication being a challenge. And there's also something, I don't know if it was trust with admin or something like that. Was that trust with admin at the district level, trust with admin at the site level, both, or there was no delineation between those parts?
It was the site level.
At the site level, okay. That's what I thought, but I thought I'd ask. Okay, thank you.
Dan.
I just want to say thank you so much for, pulling all this data and assembling it. I was the one who asked at a previous board meeting about just kind of that age-based, race-based demographic breakdown of where our staff and kind of what our retention rates look like in our, distribution. So really, thank you so much for taking the time to put that all together. It was a very, informative set of graphics, and I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Heidi.
That bookend that you talked about. I'm just curious, and maybe you don't know this, but is that typical in the teaching profession overall? Does anybody have any idea? There's that particular to our district? I'm just curious if anybody knows that. Is there a drop off from early new teachers? Just curious.
I would say this, I would say in the licensed staff in my previous years of experience, no.
Okay.
But I'd be very curious if it's a trend we'll see in the future. is
I
the
think
way I would say it.
post-COVID, that might be a different story.
And just, knowing that I'm a lifelong educator, right? This was my career, but we know the next generation is not like that, right? So they might have 3, 4, 5 jobs and they might be in different fields. And so I'd be curious if that trend would change, but I would say, just as you saw the longevity, on the bookend, right?
yeah.
I would say licensed staff is more like that, but I'd be curious if that changes.
And I think we hear a lot in Community 7 from our staff about how unique and difficult this job is and how it's not for everyone. And so while obviously retention is a goal, like retention of every single person doesn't have to be the goal, right? Like it is okay that there's a drop off for people who come here and they're like, this isn't for me, that's okay. Yep.
I think what would be a really cool statistic on that note would be if we're being successful in your early slide where you talked about the iTrack component. If we were able to get ESPs to then go down that track, convert to license, and then see what their retention is, then I bet you're gonna get a bunch more retention or higher rate of retention of that type of person. than someone who's just coming in kind of in their first stage at either a license or whatever, because I think a dedication to move through that process through what we're offering or supporting them with, I think would have a positive effect.
That kind of connects to my overarching comment that I was gonna say, which is also Dan's not there anymore. Kind of building on his appreciation, which is I have so many curiosities in looking just at this little sample that you've shared tonight. And so I just want to say thank you for, I think, bringing this and so many more things to light and the work that you're going to do to really examine it and to come up with some answers and help us ask new questions. So I just think there's real power in shining a light on some of these things and the skill that you all have to really make meaning of it for us and with us. So I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you.
And we're glad that you're here since you've only been here since August. We heard in our retreat that retaining you is a really high priority.
That is true. Thanks for joining us at your first board meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, it was a pleasure. I love meeting the students as well. I don't get that many opportunities to meet the students, so, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kiara. You finally get to sit down.
Yes.
And rest your voice a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you.
And last but not least of our four reports here, and this is the one that we do have action related to, is presentation of the World's Best Workforce Report from Dr. John Voss, our Director of Teaching and Learning.
Thank you, Chair Brock, Superintendent Dowd, and board members. Now for something completely different. The World's Best Workforce report is required to be submitted by MDE, as well as our plan for the current year. And normally we do it at the same time, but because of some changes in the deadlines tonight, we're going to look at the report on the results from last year, and then we'll bring the plan for this year forward at a future meeting, since we're also tying it to our strategic plan. A few things to note for context: we do operate on behalf of our member districts, and so students are enrolled in our programs as part of their home district's plan to provide individualized and personalized instruction. So the goals and the data that in the required areas are based on standardized measures and instruments, which are not necessarily always accessible to all of our students, and are based on regular sequential educational experience. And so the measurement of individual progress to fill gaps and accelerate learning for the students in our programs to reach adequate achievement levels are not often reflected in those standardized measures. The trajectory is often different. Setting goals based on those individual needs can be a moving target and doesn't necessarily capture the magic of learning that we see happening. We've seen it tonight. We've seen it every day in our programs. The data that drives and informs us is more directly represented in a lot of our school improvement plans. Our school improvement teams identify key areas that they really need to focus on in order to improve student outcomes that are most relevant to their populations. And so as we implement our strategic plan, we'll be aligning our goals a little more directly with these world's best workforce areas to draw that out. The standardized measures don't necessarily tell the whole story. There's a group of students that represents, but there's also a lot of other areas that we can talk about that get into much deeper individual experiences. So as we look at some of these goal areas, we'll go through each of them as what we put for goals this year. Again, just recognizing that there's a lot of different ones and they've been changing over the course of the last year with new legislation too. So with kindergarten readiness, our goal is that each student's readiness and goals for kindergarten are established through their IEPs. We don't run preschool programs, so the 14 students that we have enrolled in kindergarten received individualized services, and reflect what has been developed through their home district in terms of kindergarten readiness. Then for some of the supports we provide, our therapeutic teaching model, for instance, has been piloted in our elementary sites and is intended to specifically address some of the impacts of trauma on younger students at the earliest stages of their development. When we get into grade level literacy, this goal has been phased out now and is part of the literacy learning plan that processed through the READ Act. What we had talked about last year was improving reading screening scores. This is a good example of where we have 46 students enrolled in our K-2 program. Of that group, 10 of them were enrolled and able to take the fall and the spring reading assessments. But 16 of them had entered fall screening or entered after fall screening or left before the spring screening, so they're not included in that total. 13 of them don't access fast bridge tests, largely tier 3 students whose development is not commensurate with the A reading test. 6 students refused it, and 1 student had reintegrated and was screened at their home school. So the data represents a small portion of the students overall. We have trained all of our staff in our adopted K-8 core literacy curriculum, Success for All. We have about 75 teachers who went through the core literacy training for the READ Act this summer, and another 110 who are going through it this school year. And we've had a comprehensive state literacy development grant over the course of the last 4 years that's allowed us to provide targeted literacy coaching in our middle school grades. So then when we look at the closing achievement gap area, we have seen and looked at reading growth or catch-up goals. We've had progress over a few years. Last year, that went down, and part of that is because we were testing a lot more students in order to get screening across the board. A lot of other factors, but that's also why we start looking then at individual progress, how we manage that across our programs, and where we look at smaller groups and how to provide supports for them. We've intensified a lot of efforts this year around progress monitoring. So we're looking very closely at individual students, what their particular goals are related to the reading level that they're at, and how to address that with more interventions and more targeted efforts through culturally relevant resources and teaching and engagement in the learning process. So again, when we look through the strategic plan and the individual goal setting part of that, this is where we're trying to summarize some of what's happening in a smaller group basis instead of looking at everything overall. Winnie, can you get me that for me? There we go. College and career readiness is another one where the standardized measure isn't applying to as many students as it used to. We only had 11 students take the ACT last year. So we'll be looking at different measures for how we can consider college and career readiness in terms of what we're providing within our programs and some of the other assessments that are available too. Go one more. Yeah. Oops. We get graduation rates in there?
No.
You can go back one? Maybe it did go forward for me. Graduation rates are always a little different too, because they're a lagging indicator. For last year, we were looking at even the previous years, spring 2022 to 23 for your graduation rate. We are held to the state standard of 67%, which we come short of. But we did see a pretty significant jump last year in terms of the graduation rate for the students that are applied to us. And that's also a moving target because the students are often assigned to the district where they last attended when they are marked as graduating. Some of our students have moved on to other districts, or we have students coming in who do have one more credit with us that are added on there. So it can fluctuate depending on how those numbers work out over time.
May I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So you're saying the state mandated goal of 67%, which would be what that would be for any school district, that applies explicitly to 287. Is there any?
That's the ESSA requirement from several years ago.
Okay.
And it's a minimum expectation.
And is there any impact for the fact that we don't hit that mandated minimum?
Not specifically. We do have some supports from the regional centers of excellence to work towards developing a strategic plan and an assessment protocol and some of the things that it takes to start working on that. But again, there's a bit of a disconnect between which students we work with and who ends up on our graduation rolls. So not necessarily a one-to-one correspondence.
Thank you for the education.
So then I think as we look forward, our goal targets for individuals are tuned to their IEP growth, their school improvement plans, our strategic plans. Those literacy goals are now incorporated into our local literacy plan for the future. And we're putting more emphasis on progress monitoring of individual goal attainment that is incorporated into the strategic plan. And so that's what we're submitting to the state with our report on last year's plan.
Thanks, John. Time for comments or questions just about what we heard tonight, again, with the action here in a few moments around approving this report that will go to the state.
I would like to commend Dr. Bass as always. I'm laughing, but because, it's like this, here's our report, huge asterisk. And you do so diplomatically and without letting your head explode. That these are the things that we have to say and the way we have to say them, even though they really don't apply. Many of these things don't apply. And thank you for helping our district
Okay.
comply with the requirements and for pointing out to the board, here are the things that that are really meaningful to us, and then bringing those as well at other more at times when we're not trying to report with the state board. So thank you.
You're welcome. We take the targets seriously, and we use those benchmarks and growth goals to guide what we aim for and how we set our targets, and recognize that there's a lot of support we have to provide to make progress toward that. And I think, like some of our school psychologists tell us, the trajectory is different. It's growth is happening. It's just happening in a different way.
I see a hand over here. I'm going to both agree and have my own version of an asterisk on this, because I think that like for my grad school program, one of the things I remember is like, no standardized test is perfect, but some of the information that we get from them is really useful. And I understand how we as a district do not fit in the box that we are given by the state. And I will say it's concerning to me to see the areas where we have gone down against our own data from the previous year. So I just wanted to make sure that I articulated that, because I think that is a concerning trend for us as a district, because that is us measuring up against ourselves. And I think that is for us to continue to work within the strategic planning process that you articulated, continuing to focus on and say, what do we need to do to be making progress, and to have a better sense of what's behind those numbers being what they are, as you shared with us tonight.
Yeah, it helps us understand where we need to put our efforts and who needs the attention. And that's why we take it seriously, because it does show us that guide.
Michael?
I think on that, thank you both for what you said. I think what I struggle with is understanding when you look at that year-to-year change, whether up or down. Given given the enrollment that we have is not as static or linear as it might be in some of our member districts, I worry about how to be able to weight that delta, good or bad, in that standpoint. And so I think I agree with you. When you see a 15% drop or whatever it is, that's a flag that says, hey, what's going on there? The nuance around that, I think, is really important, which we're not going to get into this type of part. But I think if we're looking strategic planning wise, or we're challenging Superintendent Dowd and her team about what's going on there, I think that nuance and context is really important. But nonetheless, go back to your earlier comment about curiosity. It raises a lot of curiosity questions, not all positive, but curious nonetheless of what's that context. Yep. So, but I appreciate both of your comments.
I'm probably talking about this, but it's not us, that's like the problem, it's the metric, right? And
Agreed.
also, I don't like the name of it, I mean, like, what,
Oh, there's lots of
what,
issues.
like, what is the, what is the point of this thing? I would like to tell our story to people who want to listen in a much different way. This is not what I would like. So that's why I'm good, not.
No, I
okay.
totally agree. No, I totally agree. I'm glad you said what you said. I was going to say what you said. But I think it's also even in our member district, the whole thing about this workforce thing and where it's mandated from, and they've been changing it recently and blah, blah, blah. It's a nomenclature that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And more importantly, what's the tool value? Even though you're saying that you take it seriously and so on and so forth, it's really a matter of how is this useful for you to make better decisions about where you want to go with it? And I think sometimes it gets muddied. And when it's muddied, then it's like, well, I don't want you guys spinning your wheel in the mud. We don't have a lot of time and energy for that. So it's just a matter of where does it go from there? So like I said, I genuinely meant that truly, I agree with you.
Both things
agree
are,
with
both
each
things
other
are
too.
true.
Yeah.
That's- yeah, we do. I'm pretty confident. Yes, go ahead.
All the comments. But I also don't want to push away the importance of monitoring student progress.
Yes.
If you, I hope you're seeing the change of collecting data, what best meets our district to move our students forward in regards to instruction. And so if the big measure is not working, we should be coming to you with very concrete, smaller measures is the work that we need to do around the strategic plan to ensure that we are monitoring students' progress, however we're monitoring it. And so, yes, this is a requirement, but I just have to tell you as a superintendent, this is the area that we have to talk about. We can we will fill out all the requirements, but I don't want to minimize that we are so special that we can't have a measurement to monitor student progress because then we have failed our students.
Well said.
And so I will hold this one very hard and tight and say we will continue to do better in showing progress in the ways that we think are authentic ways, as well as report to MTV, because we owe that to our students. So.
That was a wonderful bow, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, I might say,
exactly.
you might consider for any future presentations of this report, start with that.
Start and end. Okay, with that, is there a motion to approve the World's Best Workforce Report as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion by Ann Casey and a second by Shannon Andreessen. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the report is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to move into our final section tonight, which I will be brief. Just a couple items under board business I wanted to flag. One is just putting on people's radar that we will need to go through the officer election process at our first organizational meeting, which is just 2 meetings from now, actually. And so in our bylaws, we have a nominating committee of 3 people that I will appoint no less than 30 days before that organizational meeting. Our meeting will take place on January 23rd, 2025. We will not have a sort of meeting in the first part of January to give member districts time to have their organizational meeting so that hopefully we have a good sense of who our board is going to be before we are then asked to sort of organize ourselves, so to speak. So January 23rd will be our first meeting of the calendar year. It will be when we select board officers for the next year. Please think about whether you would be interested in being one of the 3 people to serve on the nominating committee. I will send out additional information about what that entails, and we'll name that group by mid-December. Brian gave a great plug for the AMSD Connections newsletter already, so I'm just gonna, say that again. We have both Get on the Bus and Local 2209 meetings between now and our next meeting. So December 3rd is the Get on the Bus to the Career and Tech Center. You've got the flyer at your seat. December 10th at 1 p.m. is the Local 2209 meeting. And then I think if you would like to attend the MSBA Annual Leadership Conference, which is in mid-January of 2025, as a representative of 287, as opposed to your sort of home or member district, please let Juanine and or the superintendent know so that you can be registered to attend representing our district here. Before we go to once around the table, I will just note, as I said, we have one more board meeting in 2024, and it is Thursday, December 12th. So make sure that you have that on your calendar. We will go to once around the table, and if there is anything that board members would like to share with one another, and I'll just start by saying congratulations to board members and to districts who had good outcomes for you and your communities on election day, and specifically Ruthie is no longer with us, but she was reelected to the Brooklyn Center Community Schools Board. So just want to celebrate her in her absence. And now I will turn it over to others for any other celebrations or announcements. Go ahead, Dan.
Also, I just wanted to announce a few athletic achievements from our my gosh, my voice today. From Wyzetta. Please put the camera, if anyone wouldn't mind, on Michael Bergman. Wyzetta girls soccer defeated Edina in the state championship.
All right.
State champions for 3A. We're very proud of them. It was a joy to recognize them at the board meeting. As well as our girls cross country team becoming state champions. Very excited for them. We were able to do the same on Tuesday. A very joyous celebration. And then Oakwood Elementary, which serves primarily the central part of Wyzetta Public Schools, was recognized in Washington, D.C. as a National Blue Ribbon School. So our gratitude to the principal, Ms. Denui, for her excellent leadership with her staff, students, advisors, administrators, and so on and so forth. So just a lot of things going on in Wyzetta. I should also add on a more serious note that yes, we are in the middle of a boundary redraw. Since COVID, some inequities have arisen in terms of population, in terms of allocation of student services. So to respond to constituent, parent, family concerns around class sizes, access to student services, we are redrawing our boundary lines. The set of concepts for our elementary school group was released a couple of days ago, and we anticipate that the middle school concepts will be released shortly. So a lot going on in Wyzetta.
I mean, so she's not going to do it. I will celebrate Kim Ross on her. Anything else? Okay, it has been a good push for us on this Thursday between our board retreat preceding the meeting and a very full and important board agenda. So is there a motion to approve the meeting at this time?
Would you at this time or to?
What did I? Sure. Like literally, I can't even form. By Mike Remicall, who's our second. By Michael Bergman. Any final discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Right? Yes. We are adjourned at 8:51 p.m. Yeah, right on time, apparently. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it.
It's no well.
Just to be clear, we have 207 state championships. A week before, so.